Maria stood at the foot of the bed holding a plastic bottle of pills in her hands. She had been working here for almost 2 years, but never before had she felt such an anxious chill down her spine. The boy, Adam, the villa owner's son, lay in bed, wrapped in a blanket, his face pale as marble. He didn't look sick. He looked drugged. "Adam?" she asked quietly. "Are you okay?" The boy weakly turned his head and mumbled, "Don't let them give me that." Maria frowned. She looked at the medicine label. The name meant nothing to her, but in the corner there was a doctor's number. Not their family doctor, and not from the clinic they had previously worked with. Something was wrong. Her intuition, the very one that had saved her life more than once in poor neighborhoods and in strangers' homes, screamed, "Stop! Don't walk past!" At that moment, the door swung open with a loud click. On the threshold stood Arthur Bellevue, the billionaire head of an investment fund, a man whose shadow weighed more than many states. What are you doing in his room?" His voice was steel, cutting. Maria stepped back, hiding the bottle behind her back. "I'm sorry," she exhaled. Adam looked unwell. "I wanted to check what kind of pills these were." "Pills?" Arthur stepped closer, seeming to grow taller with each step. "You're a cleaner. You're not a doctor, not a mother. You have absolutely no right to go through my son's medication." He scanned the room as if searching for confirmation of his thoughts. And as if on cue, she appeared in the doorway. Jasmine, radiant, smooth, with hair like it had just stepped off a glossy magazine cover. She crossed the threshold with the air of a woman who knew the time had come. "I've been telling you for a long time, Arthur," she said with a sympathetic voice, but venom in her eyes. "She allows herself too much. Spying, interfering, it's dangerous." Maria looked at both of them. A crude scene, performed as if from a script, but she wasn't naive. Not in this house, not in this life. "Your son is in danger, sir," she said quietly. "I don't know who prescribed this medicine, but his pupils don't react to light. He's been half asleep for 3 days now. This is not normal." Arthur ground his teeth. "This is none of your business," he hissed. "You're fired, immediately. Think about him." Maria's voice trembled, but she didn't back down. "Not about me, about him. Look at him. Get out." She stood for a few more seconds in silence, then turned and walked toward the exit. In the hallway, Maria opened her bag and carefully placed the bottle inside. She knew this could be the end for her, but she could no longer stop. If the child was in danger and no one else saw it, then she had to see it. From outside came the hum of a helicopter. At the villa, preparations were underway for something important. They said Arthur was planning to marry in secret from the press. But now Maria knew more, and what she had seen changed everything. Jasmine appeared at the door. "Good luck," she said with a cold smile. "You'll never set foot in our home again." Maria didn't answer. She simply looked her in the eyes, calmly, firmly, like a person who had not yet spoken their final word. The door slammed shut. Maria stood beyond the villa's gates, clutching her work bag in her hands. Inside, her uniform, an old thermos, a crumpled handkerchief, and that very bottle. Her fingers trembled with anger, but inside was another. Feeling, not fear, pain, not for herself, but for the boy. Adam was so kind, too intelligent for his age. Sometimes he would tell her about birds that couldn't fly, or about his dream of getting a puppy. But Jasmine said dogs are dirty. Each day he grew quieter, paler, more detached. And now it was clear. She had seen such conditions before. This wasn't depression. This was poisoning. Slow, like a drop of poison each day. She walked on foot to the bus stop. The ocean wind struck her face as if reminding her, "You're alone again." Evening was falling. Somewhere on the hill, music was blaring. Probably a rehearsal for the evening reception. Tomorrow was the wedding. Tomorrow, billionaire Arthur Bellevue would marry the woman who might be poisoning his son. And no one cared. The next day, Maria came to the agency. The owner, a thin woman in her 50s, met her immediately with a cold expression. "What have you done, Maria?" She began, but the woman raised her palm. "You worked for Bellevue, one of the best contracts in our agency. And now he demands to terminate the agreement and threatens to sue for invasion of privacy and sabotage. I just wanted to help his son. Maria lowered her gaze. Something's wrong with him. I found suspicious medication. You're a cleaner, not a doctor, not a judge. You crossed the line. But what if I'm right? Then it's still not your business, Maria. The owner's voice suddenly turned angry. People like you should be grateful for work. But you, meddle, dig, act like a hero. No one likes overly smart cleaners. Maria slowly straightened up. So I'm fired? You're removed from all databases? And don't call me again. The following days became empty. The phone remained silent. Not a single call, not a single offer. Even acquaintances stopped replying. The rumors about the hysterical cleaner who interferes in clients' private lives spread quickly. The agency had tarnished her name, as if on command. She tried to find temporary work. Cafes, stores, even unregistered cleaning jobs. Everywhere she received polite but cold rejections. Her photo, smiling, in a white apron against the villa's patio backdrop, was already online. Housekeeper with a delusion of saving other people's children, anonymous comments read. One night she woke up in a cold sweat. She had dreamed of Adam. He was calling her, trying to say something, but his voice was too weak. In her ears rang, "Don't let them." Maria sat up on the bed, turned on the nightlight. She stared at the wall until her heart calmed down. What if no one else could intervene? What if she was the last one who could still change anything? On the fourth day, she went to her friend, Lucia, a nurse at a private clinic. "Please just look at what this medication is," Maria asked, placing the bottle in front of her. Lucia looked at it, frowned. "This is a serious psychotropic, prescribed only for severe schizophrenia or acute psychosis. And even then, under strict medical supervision, it's not prescribed to children. What if the dose is increased? Then hallucinations, confusion, nervous system depression are possible." Lucia raised her eyes. "Maria, you need to report this to the authorities. They won't believe me. I'm just a cleaner." And she's about to become Mrs. Bellevue. Maria walked home, tightly gripping in her pocket the printed analysis report Lucia had given her. They had tried to erase her from the map, to exile her, silence her, scare her. But now she had a weapon, the truth, and one clear decision: to return, not for work, for justice. Several days had passed since her dismissal. Maria sat in the small kitchen of her rented apartment, leaning over the printed analysis of the medication. Her heart tightened with anxiety and determination. She knew she could no longer afford to make a mistake. This bottle, this was her only proof that the child was in danger. But who could she tell the truth to? Who would believe her? At that moment, the phone rang, an unknown number. She answered without taking her eyes off the paper. "Maria." The voice sounded cautious yet confident. "This is Dr. Anderson. I'm a physician working at one of the clinics serving the Bellevue family." She froze. Her heart began to beat faster. "Doctor," she exhaled, "I received your note. About the boy, that something was wrong. I checked the information. You're right. This medication should never have been prescribed to a child." The doctor's voice carried anxiety. "It was prescribed by a woman working, unofficially with the family. The doctor paused for a moment. "She knows how to control the situation and conceal the truth. She's not a doctor, she's a fraud." Maria listened, clenching her fists. Finally, the doctor continued, "I'm planning to speak with the boy's father. You need to be careful. And if you want to help, return, but this time with evidence. Not just the pills, but documents, witnesses." Maria's heart filled with new strength. Her solitary fight could become a movement. A few days later, she stood at the villa's entrance, holding a thick folder filled with printouts, medical records, and notes she had gathered with the help of Dr. Anderson and Lucia. She took a deep breath and pressed the doorbell. The door opened slightly, and before her stood Jasmine. Her cold gaze met Maria's determination. "What are you doing here?" Jasmine challenged. "I've come to show the truth," Maria said firmly. "Not for an argument, for the child's protection." The door swung open and Arthur Bellevue appeared in the hallway. His face was tense, but in his eyes there was visible exhaustion. "Maria," he said slowly, "I thought you were just..." Someone who couldn't keep quiet. But it seems you said what no one else wanted to hear. I'm not your enemy. Sir, she replied. I only want Adam to be safe. In the living room, they all gathered. Arthur, Maria, Dr. Anderson, and the family's lawyer. On the table lay the evidence. The doctor explained how harmful the medication was, how the child was losing touch with reality, how dangerous the situation had become. Arthur listened, growing paler with each word. Why didn't anyone tell me sooner? He whispered. Because everyone was afraid of Jasmine, Maria answered. She manipulates. She slips the medication to control Adam and you. For a moment, silence fell in the room. Then Arthur suddenly stood up and walked over to Maria. I was wrong, he said quietly. I didn't believe you. I want to make it right. What are you going to do? Maria asked, not hiding her hope. Fire Jasmine and rehire you, not just as a cleaner, but as Adam's protector and guardian. Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. Her struggle, pain, loneliness finally had meaning. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. Days passed, filled with conversations, plans, and changes. Maria helped Adam learn to trust people again, to smile and play. Arthur began to change, gradually leaving behind coldness and detachment. At last, peace settled in the house. A peace that once seemed impossible. She knew this was only the beginning. Her mission was not merely to protect the child, but to change the system that had allowed this to happen. And deep in her heart, Maria understood. Real change requires more than just evidence. It requires a heart that isn't afraid to stay. Arthur Bellevue sat in his vast office, surrounded by heavy oak panels and numerous security screens, which usually served only to make him feel in control. But today, something drew him to one of the cameras he had almost forgotten about. The camera in his son's room. He didn't want to look. He thought that if he saw the truth, he would be able to handle it. But today he opened the screen and looked. He saw what had been hidden behind the veil of lies and distrust. On the video was Maria, his housekeeper. She wasn't just mopping floors and tidying things. She was sitting beside Adam, holding his hand, calming him when the boy cried, when he had anxiety attacks. She smiled at him gently, read books to him, drew with him. This wasn't just care. It was genuine love. And then, the footage he hadn't expected to see. Jasmine brought him medication, slipped pills into the boy's food, skillfully hiding her true face. But the camera had recorded everything. His heart clenched, his chest burned with hurt and shame. How could he have been so blind? How could he have turned away from those who truly cared? Suddenly, a sheet of paper appeared in his hands, a printout from the medical documents Maria had left him in an envelope when she left. He reread the lines, and each point sounded like an accusation against himself. You weren't there. You trusted the wrong people. You missed the most important thing, love and attention. Tears rolled down the cheeks of the billionaire, the man who was used to controlling everything and everyone. But now all he could do was admit he hadn't failed in business, but in his own family. He picked up the phone and dialed the number. Maria. His voice was quiet and trembling, as if for the first time in his life he was admitting weakness. It's Arthur. I want to talk. I want to see you. The drive to Maria took about 20 minutes, but for Arthur it was a time of reevaluating his entire life. He replayed in his mind the moments when he could have acted differently, hugged his son, believed the housekeeper's words, seen in her more than just an employee. When he arrived at her modest apartment, his heart was beating so loudly it seemed the whole world could hear it. He dialed her number and knocked quietly. The door opened, and Maria stood before him, with a tired but determined gaze. Arthur, she said simply, what brings you here? I saw it. Everything, the cameras, your documents. You were right. He paused, trying to find the words. I was wrong. I didn't know how to be a father. I was afraid. But now I want to make it right. And I want to start with you. She looked at him, and in her eyes flickered a mix of surprise, pain, and hope. Do you want to help? More than anyone, I want you to come back, not as a housekeeper, but as part of our family, as Adam's protector. You deserve this." Maria took a step forward and reached out her hand. "Then let's start again." Returning to the villa, Arthur and Maria felt how the weight of past mistakes slowly gave way to the light of hope. Inside the house, there was silence, but this silence was different, filled with the promise of change. Adam came out of his room, shyly smiling when he saw Maria. "You came back," he whispered. "I'm here," she said, holding back tears. Arthur stood beside them, feeling true pride for the first time. Not pride in business, but in the family he was beginning to rebuild. In the house where silence of alienation and suspicion had reigned just a short while ago, sounds now began to emerge that had long seemed impossible. Soft laughter, light footsteps, sighs of relief, and, most importantly, tender words. Maria sat on the soft carpet in the playroom, where colorful blocks and picture books were scattered. Adam, the boy with large, curious eyes, leaned against her, holding a soft toy, a little bear that had become, it seemed, a symbol of safety for him. His face glowed, and his breathing was steady, without the sharp gasps of anxiety that had never left him before. "Look, Adam," Maria said gently, tracing her finger over the page of a book. "This girl isn't afraid to tell the truth. She's brave, just like you." The boy quietly nodded, listening to her voice, to her care, which had become his new anchor. In the hallway, Arthur stood quietly. He watched as Maria carefully tucked Adam into bed, telling him a calm story filled with light and kindness. His heart began to melt, like ice that with each day thaws under the spring sun. "I was wrong," he whispered to himself. "All this time, I feared being weak, but now I see how important it is to be present." The following days became a true test for everyone. Every morning, Maria greeted Adam with a smile, teaching him a new rhythm of life. Regular meals, walks in the garden, sessions with a psychologist, and even simple joys. Modeling with clay, drawing, laughter. One evening, when the house had already settled into twilight, Maria and Arthur found themselves standing near the fireplace. The silence was filled with unspoken words, yet between them a new understanding was beginning to form. "You didn't just change Adam," Arthur said quietly, not taking his eyes off her. "You changed me too." She smiled, feeling how the pain of the past was gradually giving way to hope. "We're learning together," Maria replied. "The main thing is not to be afraid to stay." In the kitchen, Adam smiled as he helped prepare dinner, while Maria softly sang a song she had heard in her childhood. It was a song about how, even after the darkest nights, dawn will come. The trust growing between Maria and Arthur became a solid foundation on which a new life was being built. The father began to see in Maria not just an employee, but a person who genuinely loved his son, ready to stay by his side in joy and in hardship. "Thank you," Arthur said one day, "for staying when everyone else left." Maria looked at him and replied, "It wasn't me who stayed. It was we who stayed, together." And in this simple acknowledgement lay the strength of a new family, a family built on empathy, trust, and genuine care. When it seemed that peace had finally settled over the house and the first rays of hope pierced through the heavy clouds of distrust, a new storm struck unexpectedly and fiercely. Several weeks had passed since Maria had returned to Arthur's home and become a full part of the boy's life. Trust was growing, relationships were improving, and it seemed that the most important things, love and care, had once again found their place in this family's heart. But somewhere far away, in the shadows of luxurious offices and expensive restaurants, where ambition and cunning ruled, Arthur's fiancée, Jasmine, was preparing her strike. She could not forgive being exposed, her deception and malicious, actions revealed by a simple woman who had neither status nor connections. Her pride and reputation were at stake, and she decided at any cost to regain control, even if it meant destroying someone else's life. The next morning, several people in strict suits knocked on Maria's door, representatives of a law firm and officials from the Child Protection Department. They held official papers in their hands, a lawsuit filed by Jasmine in which Maria was accused of slander, intrusion into private life, and even fraud. "You must appear immediately for the hearing," said one of the women, handing over the summons. "The case has gained widespread attention, and the public is closely watching every step." The news of the lawsuit spread through the city like lightning. Newspapers and tabloids competed to publish headlines casting doubt on Maria's honesty. Social media exploded with comments. Some supported the housekeeper, others the wealthy heiress. Society was divided. The meeting with Arthur was difficult. His face, usually restrained and cold, now reflected anxiety and doubt. "We must be prepared," he said, clenching his fists. "But I believe the truth is on our side." Maria felt the weight of the accusations pressing down on her. It seemed as if the entire world had turned against her. For the first time in a long while, her heart tightened with fear. The fear of losing what she had managed to build. Yet she was not alone. New allies had appeared in her life. The lawyer who took on the defense of her honor, as well as old friends and those she had helped before. The court hearing became the arena of a real battle. In the courtroom, under the light of lamps, people gathered, ready to listen and judge. Jasmine delivered fierce accusations, trying to tarnish Maria's reputation and separate her from the family. But when it came time for the defense, Maria delivered a speech full of sincerity and pain. "I didn't seek fame, and I didn't want to harm anyone," she said, looking directly into the eyes of the judge and the audience. "My only goal was to help a child whom I came to love, no matter what." Testimonies from witnesses, psychologists, doctors, and even Arthur himself confirmed Maria's truth. Security camera footage, medical records, care and attention, all of this formed a picture that could not be denied. The public began to understand that beneath a simple exterior lay a deep heart and immense strength of will. Outside the courtroom, Maria and Arthur became targets of pressure and gossip. But their bond grew stronger. Together, they endured the hardships, proving that a real family is not about titles and money, but about mutual trust and support. This struggle was only the beginning of a long journey they had yet to walk. But Maria was ready to stand her ground to the end, protecting those who had become the meaning of her life. The courtroom was filled with tense anticipation. The walls of the old building seemed to absorb every word, every emotion that now hung in the air. People whispered. Someone sighed. Someone silently watched what was happening, trying to read the truth in the eyes of the protagonists of this drama. On this day, Maria stood in the defendant's seat, the housekeeper whose name was now known throughout the entire region, the woman who had challenged the world and won this battle not with diplomas or connections, but with sincere care and love. Arthur, the boy's father, stood beside her. His face was serious and composed, but in his eyes burned a fire no one could ignore. He rose and addressed the judge, his voice firm and sincere. "Your Honor," he began, "I have come here not only as a father, but as a man who has seen with his own eyes how Maria changed my son's life. I trust her more than anyone else. She is not just an employee, she is his salvation, his guardian angel." The hall fell silent for a moment, as if the air itself had stilled. These words, simple yet powerful, pierced the hearts of everyone present. Maria stood up, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice was steady. "I did not seek fame," she began, looking out at the audience. "And I asked for nothing in return. My only wish is to give children, especially those who have lost so much, a chance at a better future. I cannot change the past, but I can try to make their present brighter every day," she continued. I saw fear in the eyes of a boy who didn't know whom he could trust, and I promised him I would stay by his side, even when it was hard, because children are not just heirs or property. They are living souls who need love and care. The judge, listening to this speech, appeared deeply moved. A moment of silence passed, and then he said, "Considering the evidence presented, the testimonies of witnesses, and the sincerity of the parties involved, the court concludes that the accusations against Maria are unfounded. Moreover, her actions have helped the child and the family regain harmony and safety." The public gathered outside the courtroom erupted into applause. Many who had previously doubted began to reconsider their opinions. Arthur approached Maria and embraced her tightly. They both knew this was not merely a victory in court, but a triumph of humanity and faith in goodness. After the hearing, Maria said quietly, but with confidence, "This is the beginning of a new life. Not only for us, but for all those who need protection and love." This scene became a turning point when the court and society recognized the true value of a human heart that had surpassed all social barriers. After the court victory, an extraordinary silence settled in Arthur's home, not the kind that comes with anxiety, but a calm born from the feeling of new hope. Maria sat on the veranda, breathing in the fresh evening air, thinking about what had happened and what would come next. The family, now strong, despite all the trials, was gradually healing, like land coming back to life after a long winter. But in Maria's heart, a feeling was growing that their story was not just a private case, not just a small victory. It was the beginning of something much greater. The boy, to whom she had devoted so much strength, continued to smile, to learn, to trust, to open himself to the world. And beside him now were other children, those who also suffered but who still had no hope of healing. One evening, when everyone was already asleep, Maria approached Arthur with a determination that blazed in her eyes brighter than fire. "Arthur," she began quietly, "we saved this boy. But how many more such children are there beyond the walls of this house? How many more stories like this go unheard?" He looked at her, thought for a moment, then nodded. "You're right," he replied. "We need to do more than just care for our son. We can create a place where children who have experienced trauma and pain can find hope and support." And so the idea of the center was born, a place where every child who had endured fear, loneliness, or violence could receive care, education, and the chance to believe in a brighter future once again. The painstaking work began. Maria took charge of every detail, from selecting staff to developing support programs. She collaborated with psychologists, social workers, doctors. Her energy and passion inspired everyone around her. Arthur provided financial support, but more. Importantly, he learned to be a true partner, a listener, and a friend, not just a man with money. The center became a home for many children. Here they drew, played, learned to express their feelings, learned to trust. Every drawing, every smile, every step forward filled Maria's heart with deep meaning. However, along with success came responsibility. The center demanded attention, patience, and incredible resilience. There were days of doubt and exhaustion, but Maria knew. She had chosen her path. She spoke with each child, listened to their stories, taught them not to be afraid of being themselves, and to believe in the best. One day during a group session, a little boy approached her, clutching a hand-drawn heart in his hands and whispered, "Thank you for not leaving us." And at that moment, Maria understood. Her mission was not merely to help one child, it was to serve an entire world that had too often been left without a voice. Over time, the center became known far beyond the city. With Arthur's support and Maria's allies, she launched a training program for those who wanted to work with children who had experienced trauma. Her dream of a fairer, more compassionate society began to come true. And although new challenges lay ahead, Maria felt that their story was only the beginning of a great movement that would change the lives of many. No sooner had the first rays of hope illuminated Maria's new path in the center than dark clouds of doubt and distrust appeared on the horizon. It seemed that someone did not want to see the success of an ordinary person, did not wish for her story to become an example of strength and compassion. A quiet but fierce war began, a war against an invisible enemy, where words and lies were the weapons. Media outlets controlled by powerful circles began spreading scandalous articles. Headlines thundered across newspaper pages and online platforms. Fraudster posing as a heroine, the housekeeper who deceived a millionaire, the new center, deception and publicity stunt. Each article was carefully crafted, filled with insinuations and distortions of facts. They claimed that Maria had no relevant education, that her methods did not meet standards, and that the children at the center were allegedly in danger. People who had previously supported her began to doubt. Parents who wanted the best for their children hesitated and started asking questions. Inspection agencies began audits, formal yet persistent, as if seeking the slightest pretext to shut down the center. One morning, Maria received an official summons for an interview at the Department of Social Protection. There, they questioned her at length about documents, methods, and financial transparency. Every word was scrutinized for compliance, every document checked for authenticity. It seemed the system itself was aiming to destroy what they had painstakingly built. During these difficult days, Maria felt the pressure mounting, how uncertainty began creeping even into her inner strength. There were moments when it seemed everything was collapsing, that their efforts had been in vain. Yet Arthur was always by her side, now not just the father of a child, but a true ally. He kept his emotions in check, met with journalists, organized meetings with officials, spoke the truth, and defended the center. His support gave Maria the strength to keep fighting. "They want to scare us," he told her one evening as they sat at the table, exhausted and drained. "But we cannot give in. This is not just a center. It's a home. It's a family." Maria knew if they stepped back, thousands of children would once again be left without help. And she firmly decided to stand her ground, even if the whole world turned against her. Meanwhile, anonymous messages and comments against her began appearing on social media. Some accused her of using children, others called her a fake social worker. It was hard not to succumb to despair, but at this very moment, help came from those who had personally seen how the children changed thanks to her care. Parents, children, volunteers began writing letters of support, posting their stories and photographs. Their voices grew louder and louder. "She saved my son," one mother shared when everyone else turned away. "My daughter is smiling for the first time in a long while," said the father of another child. These words were like light in the darkness. They showed that despite the attacks and accusations, Maria and her mission were alive and meaningful. Gradually, public opinion began to shift. The inspecting agencies, seeing the genuine care and the results of the center's work, began withdrawing their complaints. Journalists who had come to tour the center changed the tone of their articles, now writing not about scandal, but about real achievements. But this struggle had left a deep mark. Maria understood that many trials still lay ahead, that to protect the children and the center, they would have to be even stronger and wiser. And despite everything, she was ready to move forward, for those who needed her help, for the hope that now burned in each of them. Evening settled over the mansion, wrapping the house in the soft, warm glow of lamps and candles. Inside reigned a quiet, almost sacred atmosphere, as if the silence itself awaited an important moment, a long-awaited recognition and long-awaited forgiveness. Everything seemed to stand still in anticipation. Arthur stood by the window in the living room, his gaze fixed on the darkening garden beyond the glass, where the trees whispered softly in the wind. His heart beat anxiously, as if sensing that a turning point was approaching, one that would change not only his life, but the life of his son. He had hesitated for a long time. Years of alienation and bitterness, resentment and misunderstanding had built up into an insurmountable wall. He feared opening his heart, feared it was too late, feared the wounds were too deep. But at this very moment he realized he had no choice. If he didn't take the first step, he would lose his son forever. Maria, who had become the bridge between them, gently approached Arthur and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly, looking into his eyes. He nodded, though everything inside him trembled. At that moment, the boy entered the living room. The young man who had grown and changed over the past months, yet in his eyes still lingered a shadow of pain and doubt. He stopped at the doorway, unsure of what to expect. Arthur slowly turned to face him, each step heavy with the weight of what they had endured, yet filled with sincere desire to be heard. "Son," he began, his voice trembling, "I know I made many mistakes. I wasn't there when you needed support. I was blind to your pain, and I am ashamed, deeply ashamed." The boy looked at him without looking away, seeing in his father not just a man of wealth and status, but a man who was finally trying to understand. "I want to ask for your forgiveness," Arthur continued, "and I promise I will try to be a better father, for you and for our family." Silence stretched, but then the young man took a step forward, slow and hesitant. I'm not perfect either," he said, "but it's important to me to know that you're here, that you see me." And at that moment, the walls built over years of misunderstanding and pain began to crumble. Maria watched this scene with a trembling heart. She remembered her own fears and grievances, everything she had endured from betrayal to accusations. But now it was time to let go of the past. Approaching Arthur, she gently took his hand. "We are all learning to forgive," she said, "not for others, but for ourselves. To release the burden and allow ourselves to live on." She turned to the boy and added, "And together we can build the kind of family everyone deserves, with love, understanding, and support." Tears welled in the eyes of all three. These were tears of release, of grievances, bitterness, and loneliness. The evening continued, filled with quiet conversations, laughter, and slow steps toward one another. Fear and alienation were gone. There was only the present, a present where there was room for everyone. This moment became a new page, a page of inner peace and reconciliation that made them stronger and closer to each other. And although trials still awaited them ahead, now they had their greatest ally, forgiveness, which they gave to one another. The next morning, the mansion was filled with the soft light of early sun. A quiet awakening. Birds chirped outside the windows, and a gentle breeze played with the leaves in the garden, the very trees that not long ago had seemed foreign and unreachable to him. Today was a special day, a day meant to mark the beginning of a new life, a new family, a new trust. In the garden, a small group had already gathered: Arthur, Maria, the boy, his son, and several close people who had walked with them through all the hardships and trials. On the prepared flower bed lay a young sapling, a strong, healthy tree, full of life, with branches and tender green leaves already promising shade and shelter. Its roots were wrapped in a clod of earth, ready to take hold in the soil. Arthur approached the tree first, knelt down, and carefully removed the sapling from its pot. His hands, confident yet trembling, held the young plant firmly, as if afraid. It might vanish at any moment. "This tree is a symbol of our new family," he said quietly, lifting his gaze to his son. "A symbol of the roots we are planting together, roots of trust, love, and hope." The son stood beside him, slightly nervous, as if not fully grasping the depth of the moment. But his eyes were bright, and for the first time in a long while, A faint smile appeared on his lips, an honest expression of joy he hadn't felt in a long time. Maria approached them, holding a small shovel and a bag of soil. She knelt beside them, helping Arthur plant the tree. Together, they gently placed the roots into the prepared hole, covered them with soil, and carefully pressed it down with their hands. "Every time things get hard," Maria said, "look at this tree. Let it remind us that even from the most difficult situations, something strong and beautiful can grow." The son watched curiously as his father and Maria worked together, as the earth embraced the roots, as the tree slowly became part of this garden, part of their lives. When the work was finished, Arthur stood up, looked at his son, and extended his hand. "Let's do this together," he offered. "Are you ready?" The boy smiled wider, finally opening his heart. "Ready?" They took each other's hands and together scattered soil around the sapling. This simple gesture became a symbol of their unity and shared responsibility. At that moment, an elderly woman approached them, his grandmother, who had silently watched over their fate her entire life. She smiled, slightly moved, and placed her hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is the beginning, sweetheart," she whispered. "A real beginning." A gentle silence hung in the air, filled with hope and promises. The sun shone brighter, filtering through the leaves of the trees and softly illuminating their faces. This garden, now home to a new tree, had become more than just a place on earth. It had become a symbol of healing, of a new family, of the possibility to believe in something better. The son, for the first time in a long while, walked up to the tree, ran his hand gently along the soft bark, and quietly said, "Thank you." These words were more than gratitude. They were recognition, acceptance, and the beginning of a new chapter. Maria looked at them and smiled, feeling a warm sensation of peace and harmony growing in her chest. Today, they had not just planted a tree, they had planted a new life, new hopes, and a new path they would walk together. And that boy's smile became their greatest gift, a sign that everything had not been in vain. Several months had passed since the events that had changed, not only the lives of Arthur, Maria, and their son, but also the lives of hundreds of other children who had found themselves in similar difficult situations. Today was an ordinary day at the center Maria had founded with Arthur's support and that of other allies. This center had become their shared hope, a place where hearts heal and faith in goodness is restored. In a large, bright classroom flooded with daylight, the first group of children had gathered, 12 boys and girls of different ages, with different fates, yet united by the same pain and desire to become better. A gentle smile played on the children's faces, though caution still flickered in their eyes, traces of past wounds and anxiety. Maria stood at the board, calm and confident. Her voice carried gentleness and warmth, but at the same time, strength and determination. She began the lesson with a simple story, telling them how each of them could find the strength within to overcome difficulties. "Today we'll talk about what it means to be strong," she began, meeting the children's gazes. "Strength isn't about never falling. It's about always getting back up after every fall." The children listened attentively, and gradually the atmosphere in the room filled with trust and mutual understanding. Maria guided them through several exercises, drawing their emotions, sharing their dreams and fears, team-building games. Each child had the chance to express themselves and feel heard and understood. At that moment, in a quiet corner of the room, Arthur sat watching. His gaze was focused, but it also held pride and gratitude. He observed how Maria led the session, how gently she guided the children, patiently and with deep care. In that moment, he understood that everything that had happened before, all the fears, mistakes, doubts, had meaning. Thanks to Maria and her selfless dedication, this center had become an oasis for those who had waited so long for help and support. Suddenly, the classroom door opened slightly, and their son rushed in. His eyes sparkled, his face glowing with joy and carefreeness. He was a different child now, free from the shadows of the past. "Mom!" he exclaimed, throwing himself into Maria's arms. She lifted him up, hugged him tightly, and he, laughing, buried his face against her shoulder. At that moment, all the children and adults gathered in the classroom felt an incredible warmth and strength radiating from this family. "I'm so proud of you," Maria whispered, stroking his head. "You've become so strong." Arthur stood up, walked over to them, and quietly said, "And this is only the beginning." Maria set her son down, and he ran off to his friends, ready now to give and receive friendship and love. She turned back to the room, meeting the eyes of each child. In her gaze was hope and a promise that they would all find their path to healing here. A doorbell rang, distracting everyone. An assistant entered with new papers, applications for expanding the center, letters from local schools, and benefactors ready to help. "Maria," she said, "there are already 12 children, but applications keep coming. People believe in you." Maria smiled, looking at the smiling children and at Arthur, who stood beside her. This was not just a victory, it was a true miracle, born from patience, love, and courage. She looked out the window, where the beginning of an autumn day was unfolding, a new season, a new chapter. And in that moment, she felt that the weight of the past was finally behind her. Now she could look to the future with confidence, knowing that together they could change even more lives. The center lived, grew, and inspired. And this family, once broken and wounded, had become a lighthouse, guiding those who desperately needed support and faith. And deep in her heart, Maria knew the most important thing was to stay, no matter what, to be there, to be a support, to be love.